Hi, and welcome to Low Code No Code. Today, again, my guest is Anthony from Melbourne, and today he will present us how he built the coffee app, which backend did he use, and how you can do it at home. So, Anthony, very warm welcome again here on Low Code No Code.
Thanks for having me again. Let's dive right in.
Great.
So this is the user interface that the user would see on the first screen once they scan the QR code, and they can go input the coffee code. And you can see this is where you can go drag and drop individual components to build the interface. In this case, we've got a couple of text components, an input field, and a submit button. So a pretty basic screen. And these components you can go easily just drag and drop from the left pane. Anything from images to input fields, you can go and grab those predefined components. But once you go and build your app, let's say you've got a basic interface together like you're seeing here. Obviously you've got a visual layer, but there's no functionality behind it. There's nothing that's actually happening underneath the hood. Let's, in that case, maybe start with explaining variables in this case. So in SAP Build Apps, you can go and define variables for whatever user input maybe you want to capture, or certain things that could change throughout the usage of an app, maybe a counter or something like that. In this case, you can see in this coffee code field where the user enters the code that they get wherever they order the coffee. You can see that on the right in the properties panel, when you go and select the coffee code component, you can see value is bound to code here. We switch over to the variables pane. You can see this is where you can go define your individual variables that you want to use throughout the app. In this case, code. We've selected a text data type for that one. Because it's just a free-form text field, but it could be anything from a true or false statement to number, email address, whatever you want. You can define the data type of the code, or even go further and define variables with more complex data types in the form of objects and lists, similar to what you would define in actual JavaScript, but obviously in a visual layer as well. So if I switch back over to the view pane, and we can see our interface again, if you want to go ahead and build some, put some logic into your app and actually have some functionality and not just a pretty looking app, we've got what's in AppGyver called the logic flow menu. So we've got the panel at the bottom here. It says...
Can you give us maybe detail in the logics, like in the coffee code, one area of logic you built there?
Yeah, sure. So you can see that the menu is different depending on whatever component you selected. So in this case, the submit button, you can see that there is a component tap event that's at the start here. So whenever the user presses the submit button, this component tap event fires and will then execute all of the subsequent logic that you add after that. And once again, you can see that we've got a menu here on the left where you can drag and drop individual components that make up the building blocks of that logic of whatever should execute whenever, in this case, the component tap event fires. So you can see that I've dragged a show spinner box here, which will then, I guess, put up a sort of loading screen for the user while all this subsequent logic is executed. Then it follows along the trail to the get record component. So that will then, you can see on the right in the properties pane, it will query through an API a table and see whether this variable that the users input, so the coffee code, is present in that table. You can see here that as ID for the query, we've put in app variable.code. So that will then query with that code to see whether or not that data is available in that table. And if the users submitted a correct code, then it will branch off to the next statement. But you can see here, if not, If it errors out and that code is not present in the table, there's a hide spinner component, so that loading screen is no longer displayed, and then they will show an alert for the user to say, hey, the code is invalid, please check your input and try again. Yeah, you can see that message, their dialog will then pop up for the user, and then they'll have to double check whatever they've input. But let's say they've put in the correct coffee code, then it will branch off to the if condition above here, and then check the output of the record. There's some more information stored in the table, but more on that later. So in this case, it will just show and check whether the code is still open and available for users to use. And in the case that it is, it will then continue on this path and then set the app variable to the code and open the next page. So you can see here, there's an open page function. I think it should be somewhere in the menu here on the left. There should be, at the top here. So you can see there's an open page flow function. You can just drag that in there, attach it to the end, and then set on the right in the properties pane to go to the next page that the user would then navigate through the app with. So let's so we want to have a look at that page. At the top left here, you've got a menu here where you can see you've got your individual screens of your app, from confirmation screen, home screen, login, review. So let's have a look at the home screen, which is assuming that the users then input the correct code, and that logic flow menu would have gone down the path that led to opening the home screen. This is what the user will then see. So once again, here you can see there's a lot of different components that make up the screen, everything from text fields to input fields, to even a slider here to capture the order of the user and the user input from the name, organization, and maybe any additional notes that the user might put in, whether they want a strong coffee or extra hot, stuff like that can be captured through here. Once again, you can see here that the value of each of these components is bound to a variable that relates to it. So if we switch over to the variable pane, we've got all of those variables that are relevant for this app. So everything from drinks, milk, to capturing the name of the user and the organization, those are all defined within that variables panel. And
you see the field milk, which is a drop-down menu. Can you give us, as an example, some details about this field?
Yeah,
what you
sure.
did there and the logic?
So you can see here, once again, if we select milk in the properties pane, we can see the properties for that component. The first one, well, the second one here in this case is an option list. So in the case of drop-down menus, you can go and you can bind whatever will drop down for the user to whatever you like, really. In this case, it's just basic text to define each of those options that the user can select. You can have a different value for the actual option that the user selects compared to the label. So maybe you've got a time drop down where you would drop down maybe 12 p.m., 1 p.m., and maybe you want to have the value associated with that to be defined in the central time zone or something, in UTC or whatever it's called. That could then be input in the value, whereas what the user sees is in the label. But in this case, I've just made both the same because it's not relevant, but you can bind each of those options to even variables if you like. It doesn't have to be free-form text. So I guess your options are quite open in how you define drop-down menus to make them more dynamic and not just hard-coded text in this case. So another cool thing about this component is actually that, as we saw before, when the user uses the app and they select an espresso or long black, when they select that from the drink drop-down menu, the milk drop-down menu actually disappears. And in this case, we can see that the visibility property for the milk drop-down menu is bound to a function that will say hey, whether if the drink variable is either defined as short black or long black, then make this milk drop-down menu invisible, so visibility will equal to false in that case, because it's not relevant. Obviously, if you're ordering coffee without milk, you don't need to select the milk. But that's just one example of how you can use app logic to, I guess, dynamically alter whatever the user interface looks like in this case. Yeah, that probably sums it up. Any other ideas?
No, I would say let's go on behind AppGyver. You used the HANA Cloud and Business Application Studio to set up the whole scenario. I would say next we will have a look there. Anthony, you used for your solution Business Application Studio and SAP HANA Cloud. Can you give us some details how you did that and why?
Yeah, so I mean, in this case, for the app I built, to submit orders, obviously, you need to query a table, and in that case, it had to be an external table. It can't be defined within the app logic, because obviously the orders that a user submits need to be recalled from a different device. So I used the guided development tool in SAP Business Application Studio to spin up an API. And you can do that through a low-code, no-code interface, which then you basically define whatever tables you want to query. In this case, the HANA tables that contain all the information from the name of the user, the organization, the drink that they select, the milk that they select. So those are all fields within those tables, and that is then queried through AppGyver via OData API. So in Business Application Studio's guided development tool, you can then see you can define the data model and the individual tables and associations with this. This is not the table that I use, but it's a good example of something that you can do within this tool, which is also then interlinking and defining the associations between different tables, whether it's a one-to-one and whatever key fields you have. You can do that within this interface as well, and then expose that as an API, so you can have a table that you can then read and write to via OData.
I appreciate your time very much, and I hope we will see us again here on Low Code No Code.
All right, thanks for having me, Jonas. See you guys next time.
Bye.